Hello, everyone. Priyanka, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Nirmala.
Hi, hello, and welcome to Kaboom Talks. And it's kind of an absolute misfortune that I have to start with an apology. But since we're technical people, we're the ones who goof up the most, and we were planning like this very high-end technology, which obviously did not back us at the right minute. And but then we're here now, and we'd like to welcome you to Kaboom Talks, the sound of change, where we bring you guests who are change makers in their own rights and who come and share incredible stories and experiences with you. We also conduct workshops which are for young people who want to work in the impact sector or are already working within the impact sector. So follow us and join us, and hopefully from the next time we will be on time, because Kaboom has a reputation of being on time usually. Um, so now coming to today, a lot of us kind of can say, why ethics, why documentary? So to start with and introduce myself, I'm Nirmala. I lead the team at Kaboom here, and we're a social impact organization. And a lot of work that we do involves working with vulnerable populations, with marginalized communities, whether it is research, whether it's creating content, whether it's filming or co-creating products and solutions with them. And one thing that stands at the forefront is the ethics of working with a community which may not be one that you come from, or which faces issues which may not be issues that you face. And in the light of all of that, when we sort of started pondering over the issue, we said this is a great topic to really talk about, because there are lots of theory around it. But when it actually comes to the practicality of it, it's not as easy as it is written in a lot of places. And anyone who goes to the field can vouch for that fact. And therefore, we chose documentaries because, documentary is an art where every aesthetic element almost always has an ethical side to it. And every ethical issue can produce or not produce something aesthetic for you. And therefore, we thought that, why don't we kind of start off talking to a young documentary filmmaker who's right here with us, Priyanka Verma. Priyanka, in her career spanning 9 years, has been a part of over 100 films as a director and a director of photography. She's worked as a journalist, made independent films, worked on advocacy films for campaigns along with organizations like UNICEF, UNDP, WaterAid, International Justice Mission, Salam Balak Trust, and Girls Not Brides, to name a few. Priyanka has been working with Kaboom for over 3 years now, on and off. And what I admire about her work is how she deals with people in her films, the certain sensitivities that she brings in that allows the dignity and respect that every human being, wherever they come from, deserve. And she's able to bring that out in her work. And I think that is the reason why we sort of collectively decided that Priyanka is going to be our first guest on this series. So enough about all of this, and now we're going to get down to talking, which is what we're here for. So Priyanka, welcome. And to kind of really start things off, when you go in to make a documentary film, when you get the story, what is the process? How does the story become a film?
I think when you say a film, it's a humongous term, right? And even within the documentary film, there are various kinds of documentary films now, which use various means of telling that same story. It can be observational, participatory, reflexive, all kinds. And we're also using this boundary between fiction and non-fiction that's also getting blurred. So we are right now at a very interesting time within the documentary filmmaking circuit. Other than that, when you say films and the kind of films that we have worked together on, those are also films that are advocacy films, that are made to inspire direct action. And so when the process of both are very different, very very different. But I think there are a few things that I carry with me when I do both of these films. And I can start off by, saying the first thing that, when I'm approaching an independent documentary and that kind of work starts to happen, it actually, the idea is also always coming, and it's informed by the kind of experiences and the lived realities that I am a part of. And then the process is largely intuitive. The beginning, the questions that I start to ask myself, the place where I find myself in the current ecosystem of, the world which you're part of, the politics, the personal becomes political, that aspect of things. So that's independent documentary work. But when I think I want to talk a lot about advocacy films and films that are commissioned, right? Because I've also largely worked on commissioned films, which are for broadcast organizations, media organizations, or for not-for-profit organizations that are trying to bring change through storytelling. So the process there is something that I can get into. I think I ask first 2 to 3 questions, to myself, whether or not I'm interested in the topic, first of all, that I am going to cover. Say, for example, child marriage. That's a topic that I'm, I come from a place where I have seen that happen. I come from Azamgarh in Uttar Pradesh. I've seen that happen, and that's a topic that I'm very much interested in. And so then it's just a topic, right? We all are interested in topics, right? We want to eradicate a social issue, but that's not a film. A topic is not even a story. Now, I can give an example of how a topic is different from a story. Say, for example, let's take the example of Flea, this film by Jonas, this director, 2021, this film came out. It's about this man who's fled from Afghanistan, and he lives in Denmark, and now he's settled, he's made a life for himself. The topic is migration, and the story is about this man, Amin, who's moved to Denmark from Afghanistan. He's made a life for himself. He's now a professor, he's an academic. 20 years later, he decides to get married to his boyfriend. And now everything that he's built for himself, of course, it's at stake now, right? And he chooses to tell this story. He wants to do this. And now this is a story about migration, right? And that's how a topic is different from a story. And then comes a film. Now this, of course, this is a true story. And, same with advocacy films. I'll take example of one of my advocacy, films that I was working on. This was a documentary film for a broadcast organization, media organization. And this was about, okay, yeah, I think I dropped out, but okay, I'm back in. So this one was about COVID-19 and the second wave of COVID-19, the impact it had on the people here in India. And I was looking at one specific aspect, which was how gender. Nirmala, are you there? Because you've dropped out. But I'll continue to speak because I think I'm still here. Are you there? You are.
We just highlighted you. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So, so this was a film about COVID-19, and I was talking to. Let's get to the point. I was talking to women who are, who have survived domestic violence. Now, I was hoping to, of course, first talk to them and get to see whether or not they're comfortable even having that kind of conversation with me. So of course I approached them through an organization that has been working with them for a long time now, and they have been doing this work through on the ground, going there, meeting these women. That's their major work. This is the organization that I first got in touch with. Now the questions that I asked them was, what are the things that I can safely ask these women? Because of course there are questions that I could ask and move on with, but that could trigger them, right? What are the questions they're comfortable being asked, basically? If I enter that space to ask them these questions, are they going to be comfortable with me? Because the organization now knows, who am I, what my ethics is, why am I doing this story, why this is important to tell right now. these are the questions that I came with when I walked in to meet the organization first. Then came the point of, can I talk to these women? Which was actually, semi-structured interviews that were open-ended largely. And that is what we call pre-production. And, this is something that sets the ground for me to form some more concrete questions that I could ask them. That would then, be the spine of the film in that sense. That will then, give me the beginning, the middle, and the end of film, so to say. But at all of these processes, in all of these steps, the first thing that I keep in mind is to be transparent. I think I need to say this because transparent about who I am, why am I here, why do I tell this story, what's at stake for them, what's at stake for me, the fact that I will come in with a camera, the fact that the camera is only, I also tell them this, that it's only an extension of my body. It is not going to be bulky. I carry small cameras. Uh, but that doesn't help people because, a camera is a camera. And there's nothing objective about you entering into somebody's house with a camera in your hand. There's nothing objective about it. It's not an objective truth at all. It's subjective. There's so many subjectivities just attached to that. So I try to be as transparent as possible and build some sort of a relationship with them, before I even think about the film. I'm not thinking about the film in the pre-production stage because I have heard a lot about what the media organization wants, like the commissioning producer, what do they want, for the film to be. There is a story arc, there is a structure, and I know about that. Now, I think I become a mediator where I'm the center of, understanding what does my agency and this organization, what do they want? What is their cause? What is their purpose? Where do they want to put it out? Then I think I then go with all of this information to the people who I will be working with and working with for a long time. So yeah, I'll stop there. Go for it.
No, that's fantastic because oftentimes what happens is when for instance when we are running campaigns, there is a larger ask of a campaign, and a film is usually just a part of the campaign. Yeah. And to find a filmmaker who understands that larger asks and believes in that larger ask and create something that kind of contributes to that larger ask, rather than saying that I'm going to go out there and make a film, and then I don't know whether it works for the campaign or not. I mean, that's not my problem, because that often happens, right? So I think to be able to understand and to believe in that cause and be able to kind of work within those kind of constraints, because then it's another constraint that's coming on to you as a documentary filmmaker, that what the ask is. And I would think that someone like you would go into it only when you believe in that ask, and you wouldn't go into it if you don't believe in that ask. And I don't think anyone should go into it if they don't believe in that ask. I mean, whatever that call to action is or whatever that advocacy point is, you should not enter that zone if you don't believe in it. So therefore, it's kind of, it's a very interesting thing that you just said, like to be able to become that bridge between that ask and the people is just so important. And which is so different from if you're making a documentary film, which is, a film that comes from your heart and which can, so it's an issue that you want to portray. It's very different then. And yeah, I think that's a great sort of difference that you point out in the two processes. And but tell me, when you do these advocacy films and, we give you 2 days and 3 days to shoot and not more than that ever, because, there's never more budgets than that. How do you build that relationship with people? Because it's one thing to spend 20 years with somebody and, make a film or be a fly on the wall for 15 years. Great documentary films have been made like that. But what do you do? Because it's such a huge constraint. In 2 days, you need to get to know someone. You need to get these deepest of stories from them. How do you manage that?
I think it's tough. It is tough to, and especially, I mean, I think if you're talking about advocacy films, it's not that tough. But if you're talking about, say, if I am in those kind of intense, difficult life situations, like a refugee crisis or something where, something is like the COVID film, for example, it's the ASHA worker is right now out and there is a COVID patient and we are outside their house and, I could get infected. She is going to get probably infected. there's a lot at stake, and trust is something that is built, that is getting built minute by minute, or is being broken in the same order. It's actually a very tight rope, and I think for me, what matters is that um, at all the times, the people who I'm working with, the who agree very generously, agree to be a part of this film, so called, that I'm making. I think I have a huge responsibility towards them, that because a film travels, right? A film travels, and there is a lot of risk involved in terms of the kind of safety, these people who are taking part in it, they, whether or not they will be safe. And I'm not talking safety in terms of, say, for example, a woman who's rejected getting being a child, bride, and her family gets to see. I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about, simply, for example, I was in a slum, Simapuri, and the woman had agreed. This is a simple ethnographic film, and we are shooting just the interiors of the house. The husband walks in. He was not okay with me being there. He looked aggressive and he was hungover. And I have to stop filming. I have to understand what is happening. And I know the woman because we have built that rapport over phone calls. I've met her beforehand. So I asked her, and she said, he did not know that you're coming. He didn't know that you are going to be here with the camera. So I have to stop filming instead of being like, oh my God, this is happening. I should shoot this. I can't do that. So I think and in this, I think it's so important to be fully present wherever I am at. It's a very easy thing to say, but it's a very difficult thing to do. And in doing that, you actually, a lot of times, there are things that people are not telling you. Uh, and actually, that's where the story is. So a lot of times I let people talk. So let them talk, give them some time. So I try to meet them beforehand and let them talk, so that all the things that I don't want is out. It's like the morning pages. And a lot of times, a lot of filmmakers do this, that they are like, oh, if I let them talk, then this won't come naturally on the camera. But I don't follow that. I let them talk. Let it happen. If I have the time over the phone or whatever, let them talk. Because once they are on my side, it works. They will tell me everything that I have to know with regards to the film universe as well. It happens that they do tell me what do I want to know, because it's a matter of how do I frame my questions for the second set of interviews, right? The same questions in a much more interesting way, that they are interested to answer that, and they're interested to talk to me about it. And I think one very, very critical thing that I keep in mind is, I am there because I am amazed, and I'm not here to like save something, or like be like, oh my God, I'm going to tell this story, and they owe me something. There is this tendency that they should be there at 7 a.m. when I'm there to film with them. They can't. Sometimes they will not be there. So there are those challenges. I mean, my shoot schedule is at 7 a.m., but they're not there. They don't want to be there. They don't owe me anything. That's the integrity and the trust that I will have to build with them. I have to earn it so that they also show up at 7 a.m. I can't expect that. And also, there's a lot to learn. I think there is this colonial, bottom down approach, where we, as NGOs, a lot of times advocacy films, when we make them, we think that we are here to like solve this issue. But when I've been on the ground and I've been with these communities, I have had the chance and the privilege to learn a lot from these people who do not share the same life experience with me, whose lives and worlds are completely different from me. But I've had such privilege to learn so much from them. Actually, I think that's very important, to sit with them where they sit, to stand when they stand. I often mirror them, by the way. This is one of the tricks that I use. It's,
A very interesting anecdote on that. When you said mirror them, I was once in North Bihar shooting a very difficult film on trafficking. And there was this girl we were going to shoot who was a survivor of domestic work, and she was trafficked for domestic work. And she was sexually abused, and her story was a very difficult story. And but she'd gone through her rehabilitation, and she's a very strong girl, very very strong girl. And her husband stood by her, and they agreed to come on camera and see the entire story and everything. So I spoke to her over the phone, and she was perfectly fine. But I was 5 months into my pregnancy at that point of time. So my team was doing the recce. And they did the recce. They spent the whole day with her. And they called me in the evening and said, Nirmala, this story is not going to work. There is nothing in this. She doesn't talk. She's a very soft-spoken person. I mean, there's nothing there. And she just she just gives this random story and there's nothing in it and da-da-da. And they were very... So I said, okay, but let me come and meet her once because, I mean, when I spoke to her, I thought that she was a very strong girl. And but then my team had completely rejected the story. They said, "Nahi hai isme kuch." But I go there and I reach there, and she comes out, and this was November, so she has a shawl around her, and she's as short as I am. She's a young girl. She comes out, her husband standing behind her, who's also a young boy, and I look at her and I said, "Tum pregnant ho?" And she looked and said, "Aap bhi pregnant ho? Kitna mahina?" And I said, "5 mahina." And she said, "Main bhi 5 mahina." And that was it. That was all that was needed. I mean, you should see that. You should see her. You should see her speaking. She was so strong, and my team was like, "Oh my God, what is happening here?" Because for 2 days we've been sitting with her, and we've just not been able to crack the ice. Sometimes it's the simplest of things. And I was very angry with my team that you didn't notice that she's pregnant. And that's so insensitive. Like, you should have noticed that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Because that's the most important thing for her in her life right now.
Yeah.
And it is right. It is for all of us. It's one of the most important life events that happens in our lives.
Yeah.
And somebody comes and wants to know intimate details of your life and does not even acknowledge the fact that you're pregnant. I'm also not going to share my story.
You don't want to talk. Yeah. And I think it goes
Talk.
back to being present. Like, it just goes back to being fully present wherever you're located, and then seeing whether or not this person is interested in sharing with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, such an important point to kind of be there and be there not as someone who has an upper hand, but be there saying, I'm thankful that you share your story with me.
And genuinely thankful.
Most
Yeah.
of the time they get nothing out of it, like you said. I mean, people who are part of documentaries, part of advocacy films, personally get nothing out of it. They're actually doing the issue a favor by being in it.
Yes.
Yeah, so such an important thing, right? Yeah. So tell me, when you kind of shoot these, I mean, different kinds of films. Like, for instance, you've done a film on Love Jihad. I'm sure that was a very interesting experience. Tell us bits about that, Priyanka, because I mean, we're also in the interest of time. I'm kind of, going to want you to say some of the most interesting things here.
Yeah, I can share the anecdote as that's something that ties back to what we were talking about and can further our conversation about who is present where, whose story is it, and why are we the right person to tell that story. Um, and in fact, about agency as well. And in fact, uh, the fact that we often talk about you have to be from the same community to be able to tell the story from that community. There's something interesting in this anecdote for you to unpack. So what happened was, this was a story. This was a commissioned work, for a media organization, and we were hoping to send this film to festivals and garner attention like that, and that did happen. And we won awards. How was this one particular scene shot? Now, okay, so this is the situation. We are in Aligarh, and we are we pre-production has happened. Solid pre-production has happened to the T, and now we are there. We are on the ground. Now we know that there are a group of people who are so-called the people who will stop love jihad from happening, right? The Hindu right-wing people, and they are here to talk to us. They have agreed to talk to us, and I'm shooting this independently, like single-handedly. I'm directing and shooting. The camera is with me. These people have agreed to speak with us at 9 in the morning But somehow things shifted around because, of course, life happens, and they've engaged with us. They didn't pick up our calls. Nothing happened, and then 9 p.m. they want to call us to talk to us, and we are not feeling safe. There is the director, the co-director with me, and the journalist on the story is a Muslim man, and we're not feeling safe to go in their space to film this at 9 p.m. So what do I do? And this is something that we often think about, right? Like, do I set up a scene, or do I shoot like a fly on the wall and it's an observational scene? But here's what I did. I just asked them, first of all, to talk about themselves, introduce themselves, hey, hi, hello. And then we didn't even start rolling because, of course, we didn't have the consent. They first wanted to know who we are. The moment I told them my name and then introduced my co-director, their ears were perked and they were like, what are you talking about? Like, this seems to be like a case of love jihad. The fact that him and I are together here shooting this. And we were feeling very scared that something may happen now. I'd asked, and we also plan, what to do if something bad happens. Like, how do you exit? Like, share our contact details with the executive producer so that if something happens, our location is tracked, etc. Because safety first. In that moment, I had a set of questions that I could have asked them. But since this was the situation, and I was, of course, living, breathing, and present in that room, and I could feel the tension, heavy, heavy duty tension, I just asked them, what, the work that you do is very interesting and very new for me. I just think that too many news stories about how you do this work and why this work is important. Sorry, why you do this work and why this work is important. But there are not many stories about how do you do this work, and how do we unpack that? Like, how do I find out more about how do you stop love jihad from actually happening? So there are 8 of these boys, and they start talking about how does this happen, because now they're really interested. I said, and I actually want to know, and I don't want one person to tell me how it happens. How about all of you talk amongst yourselves as to, say, 9 a.m. you hold a meeting in the morning, right? And there's a case. How do you solve it, right? Just let's solve it. And so they started solving it. They forgot that I was present because I actually stepped back and the camera was around my neck, and I told them that I'm rolling, and they're like, in the frame, they said, okay, go for it. And I actually learned quite a few things, which I wouldn't have got if they would have given me answers to my questions about why this is important. Now I'm hearing things which are actual accounts of how do they go to a restaurant, and they're showing me images of the man who they actually caught on their phone, and then I go closer and then I shoot that, and how do they actually got this man who was जिसने पहला फसला के लड़की को restaurant में ले गए थे, and how does that, how did they get him, and how do they think that this is a man who's actually done Behlana Fuslana? How do they find out, right? So you have to be on the side of the person whose story you think you're telling. I think that's what I wanted to tell you. And also authorship, right? One may say that
I want to say something very interesting here. There's a Russian filmmaker called documentary filmmaker called Viktor Kosovsky, and he says that don't film if you already know the message before filming. So this is like a great example of that. If you already know, if you've already judged someone, if you've already pre-decided what it is, you may have your opinions. I'm an extremely opinionated person, but when I go into film, I have to be humble. I can't take in my opinions with me at that point of time, because if I already know everything, then what am I there to learn? I mean, so it's a process of learning, right? So
and the fact that I want to sum it up, because, for example, my co-director is a Muslim man. For him, one could say that this is the conversation. This is the largest debate right now, that people from the community should be telling the stories from their community. It would be actually very risky for him to tell that story, because I was present as an outsider. So sometimes it's important for an outsider to be present with the insider, because and then he could give me some insights which I didn't know, you know. And so that combination of team of people being present in their room did a good did you know, it was a great trailer that we made out of that. So yeah.
And you know, this kind of brings us back to like one of the first things that you said right at the beginning, which is that there is nothing objective about what we do. You know, just because it's a documentary, don't mistake it to being objective. Like my professor Arun Gupta back in college used to always say that the moment you place your camera, you've decided to set a frame where you've excluded something, you know,
Yes.
and there goes objectivity out of the window. It's you're not showing anyone the entire picture. You've made a decision there, and that is a subjective decision. And from there on, it's a story you're telling, right? So anyone who thinks that you know a documentary is something that's absolutely objective and I'm getting to see all sides, that's a news report. That's not a documentary. So and that's not even an advocacy film. We're not being objective there. We all have
Yeah.
like there is a story that we want to tell for a reason, and that's what's happening there. But when you're doing that, you know, how do you, and such a difficult thing that how do you create an engaging and a compelling film while you take the responsibility to portray the reality accurately?
Very nice question. I think there are multiple realities, first of all. Okay, and I think that is what I focus on. And oftentimes I'm told by people who I'm working with that, hey, this, for example, this woman who lives in the slum is not looking like she lives in the slum. And something has to be done, like, so that she looks like she's looking very happy. Or some woman who's lost her husband, she's not looking that morose. And that is something that I just say no to. That's something that I just initially, because that's you breaking the stereotypes. There's no one reality. There are multiple experiences, and what do you do with that? You show them. I just show them, and you just capture them as they are, and you show them. And I think the merit lies in the fact that you are present and compose those realities, those multiple living, breathing realities. And that is when and that is when we will have a richer world. I'm going much farther, but I think that is what excites me. There are multiple realities, and they all should exist. And okay, coming back to your question about um, yeah, how do I accurately portray a reality? So yeah, this is reality for me, and now I have to see that where and how does this fit within, say, a film, right? Now I am dealing with a client who wants a film on, say, for example, migration or uh, you know, fashion waste, like you and I worked on, right? And the reality of the matter could be something entirely different, where when I'm on the field and shooting with these people who are workers, when I talked to people, it's the idea and the visuals that are formed in my head is very different from what's happening there. So I think it's a matter of making sure that again, you're true to what your subject stands for, what their ideals are, what their values are, and then making sure that you communicate this very well to the people who you are working for, right? They might also have assumptions and biases. A lot of times this happens, and I have to tell them sometimes, unfortunately, that doesn't exist. And it has happened between us as well. I've told you that I'm here, Nirmala, and this doesn't exist, this is not happening. However, this is happening. And then I have to think and put my thinking cap on as a storyteller to say that, okay, now if this is happening, then how can this be turned into a visually stunning film? And there are some essential ingredients of a visually stunning film. And I then have to follow that and marry both of them to tell the story. So, yeah, this is what.
Yeah, I mean that's where form helps, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of.
We can talk about form also. We talk about form.
Yeah, I mean we will come to that. I think somewhere what you said about being true to what the subject wants is, I think, where the real sensitivity lies. Oftentimes Like I do this all the time. I always give people I'm shooting the option of wearing the best clothes that they have. I always tell them, because for me it's very simple. Yeah, if somebody's coming to shoot me, will I be in my pajamas? Probably not. Unless they want me to be in my pajamas for a reason.
And that
You know.
reason needs to be explained to you, right?
Exactly. And yeah, they'll have to convince me to put me in a pajama there. Otherwise, I'll be dressed, right? Like I wore my dress, and I did my hair before coming in to sit here also. So why not the other way around? Yeah. So I get very upset if someone says, "Oh, but a tattered shirt or a tattered sari is okay." No, I mean I've had situations where I've got somebody did not have a nice sari, and I got her to get a sari from somewhere else and wear that sari because I think it's dignity that I owe anyone. Yeah? I mean, and she wants to look nice when she's coming on camera, right? Why wouldn't she want to? And I don't think that affects the story at all, and I don't think that affects the truth either.
No.
Because at the end of the day, it's what she says that matters, and what she wants to share with me that matters. And at the end of the day, choice has to be hers.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I come to like, what are your big do's and don'ts on the ground, like like non-negotiables.
That's big. That's a big question.
Quick ones, huh? Not too.
But, can you narrow it down in terms of do's? Let's just focus on do's.
I'll give you an example. Like for me, and this is for everybody on my team. For instance, if we're going to shoot, we will not shoot a story where the person does not have some form of ground spot existing. For instance, if I've gone to a place to shoot a particular story and I find another story and there's no organizational support that the person has, there's nobody nobody around there, which is a community support that they have. It's just an independent individual story, but a very strong story, could be a controversial story. I will not shoot that. I will not shoot that purely from the perspective of safety. I'm going to shoot this and go away from here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sometimes where the story travels is not even in my hands.
Yeah.
And the person does not understand the gravity of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not shoot that story. However it may be, I will shoot it. And I've had differences with my team where they found one trafficking story on the ground and there was no organizational support. And they're like constantly calling me saying it's a very strong story. And I'm like, as long as there's no NGO backing it, you're not going to shoot that story because it's a dangerous story. That person understand the consequences of it. It's a big non-negotiable for me. Like, I wouldn't do it.
That is very interesting. Also, in a time like this, where stories are being viral and people are, there's, some of these people are also getting named to fame. They claim to fame also, right? They are. That's also happening, right? So you don't know how shooting something like that might affect people, but it's a very risky territory, right? Yeah. I think I'll actually focus on a couple of things, which is related to shooting advocacy films. One of the key things that I do is consent has to be informed. It's not a matter of, okay, I give you the paper, the consent form, and you just sign on it. It has to be informed. It has to be talked about. It has to be, because a lot of the people who we work with, they do not understand what is written there. What does it imply? What are the long-term consequences of being a part of something like this? And they are absolutely vulnerable, power does not rest equally, right? It's unbalanced. So I cannot do that. So I have to make sure that there's informed consent. And how does that informed consent happen? Before the shoot or after the shoot or in between the shoot is also a time that I, specifically think about on each shoot. So it's very, very, that's a big one for me. I, in fact, have said no to some shoots where there is no consent and people are thinking to, shoot fly on the wall and we'll just shoot some real people and we'll just get the shot. That's not okay, Another thing I think I do is also make sure that I share my number with them, the people who I have interviewed, contact number with them. So that if they want to reach out to me, something happens, they don't want to be a part of something like this. They've said something they don't want to say, right? We've talked to them about this, but they still want to say something when we talk later on, we reflect upon it, right? It's a process, right? And we are like, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. So who will they go to if they have a feeling like that? So I always make sure that I leave my number, put it in their phone. If they want to reach out to me anytime, they can. And I have people who I am in touch with, like that. It's a bond that you build because you're working with real people. So I hope I'm clear. Yeah, these are the two things that I make sure with regards to consent. And
Yeah,
I
give me some example of this.
yeah, one of the big do's that I do is I meditate before I go out in the field so that I just completely drop any kind of ideas and notion about what something is and should be and should not. And that actually helps me because we unconsciously carry a lot of biases. We are human at the end of the day, and it's not to say that oh, I'm so self-righteous. Look, I can tell somebody else's story in this informed way. It's not possible. It's humanly not possible because we're all full of ideas about what something should be, what something should look like, and that needs to be dropped before we enter the field. And I make sure even if it is a 4 a.m. shoot, I wake up at 3 a.m. and just drop it. I have to drop it. It is true because that makes a hell lot of a difference. Because when you enter the field, you don't know what's waiting for you. A lot of times it has rained. And so I have ideas about this is the shot I want, but it has rained. And it's not the rain that's the problem. The problem is there are people who are actual living, breathing people who've left their work for your shoot. So I have to deal with that. I want to talk to them. My entire focus is and responsibility is towards them. And for that, I need to be unburdened of all of my notions of what, oh, this is what I want and this is how it should look. So these are the three do's that it's a must have for me. Yeah.
Oh, that's actually great. I mean, you've touched upon some very interesting things around, consent and being present and, dropping on notions. And in spite of that, there are times when, things go completely haywire. I'll give you an example of something that happened just a few months back for us where we were shooting these films for UNICEF, and the filmmakers were very clear that, we're going through organizations. There is, UNICEF is present there. The concept's explained very well. And they got this fantastic story from Rajasthan of a trans person. And he'd done such great work, during COVID. What the person had done was work for the community and ensure that they get their documentation, because they didn't have documentation because of which they couldn't get vaccinated. So that was the work that was done. And the person was fantastic on camera, spoke really well, very poetic. Everything was great. Like, some people are made for the camera. That's what the person was, like, completely like that. And the film was made. We were all very excited about it. Before going online, we checked the consent forms. Everything's there. It was explained. We go online and suddenly the phones are ringing incessantly, the numbers, and the person's calling and saying, "You don't want this online." And the first reaction, of course, was, "But you agreed." And it's like, "No, I don't want it online." So then there was no discussion within the organization. The first thing we did was pull it down. You pull down the film and then you get into a discussion of what can be done about it.
Yeah.
So first we was to pull it down, and then we informed UNICEF that we've pulled it down.
Yeah.
And what was the most important thing was, if the person doesn't want it online, it's not going to be online. It doesn't matter what the client feels or somebody else feels. None of it matters. It has to be pulled down first, and then we start thinking about what can be done about it.
Yeah.
A film is being made, or it's a strong story. You obviously want that story to go out, and it's a very positive, very nice story. So you really want that story to go out, but then not if the person does not agree. So then, of course, we pulled it down and everything, and then the person said, "I want this edited." We edited that, and of course wanted the face to be sort of blurred. It was done, and then it again went back online later. But I think that to be able to be present not just while you're shooting, but also to listen to the people after you've shot the film, because your responsibility continues. You can't say, "Filmmaker, कि अभी मैंने master दे दिया, तो अब मेरा कुछ नहीं लेना देना."
No way, no way. It's not fiction film. It's not a set. गया अभी हमसे मतलब नहीं है.
हाँ, exactly.
ऐसे नहीं हो सकता है. Other thing I think what you said is very, very interesting. This happened with me as well. I'll share an anecdote. The COVID film that we were filming, a lot of times when you're working with a documentary, right, and there is a real social cause that you're talking about, and there is potential for change, and you're with a camera, and you are in a community healthcare clinic where you've gone with an ASHA worker. All the people around around you, they start wearing masks, and they are like behaving very differently because there's a camera present. So a lot of times this starts to happen when you're filming with uh, real people who think that something is going to change in their lives because a camera woman has come and she's going to do something, right? Like something is going to happen. So first of all, first thing that happens is they start, because also we also are living at a time where we have phone cameras, we are all constantly performing, right? So that's another thing that I can talk about. We have to, as a filmmaker, my idea is to how do I make this person stop performing so that I can like drop this guard. But anyway, what you just shared is very interesting. The same thing happened. I walked into the space. All the workers they start wearing masks. They weren't wearing masks. So the process of making this film became also a process where there is good behavior around me, like the COVID normal behavior, that is being followed. So much so that I met these few girls who were supposed to be young girls who were supposed to be vaccinated 6 months ago, but the vaccination has stopped happening because of COVID. And little girls, under 5 years of age, you ought to be vaccinated, right? So I am there with the camera, and these health officials are there. And they are like, oh, we have to start this vaccination. We should do this. So behavior changes when you're present with the camera. So that kind of work also starts to happen. Now, what happened interestingly in this case was I shot this in parts. I came back and I asked the ASHA worker, can I use this material in the film? And she said, no, don't use it because I have told you that you can film with me. However, they don't know that, and you have only been filming with me. Priyanka, do not go and film everybody else. And I was like, oh my god, that is just so humbling to hear that, right? Like I think, oh my god, I've got this, and this is so interesting. This is a new angle in the film, but I can't add that. That's it may be interesting, but I can't add that. Like you said, something else is happening on the side. It's a great story, but you can't shoot and add that. You have a responsibility, and you have to keep coming back to it because that's the center and the spine of that. That's where your integrity is actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we could term a coin. I mean, we coin a term called filmmaker's heartbreak, which is essentially when you have to not use a shot which is really close to your heart.
Now,
I
have a lot of such shots, by the way. Just lying.
Don't we all?
God.
It's fantastic. It was great talking to you about this, Priyanka, and I really like that we kept it not theoretical, but really about things that happen on the field and really about experiences that are far more difficult to deal with because sometimes like thinking on your feet is also not easy, right? Because there's just when you're filming, it's not like you have a 60 people crew there helping you with everything. You're also hungry. You're also thinking, "Abhi main khana kahan se khaungi?" All of that is running in your head, right? Like a real human being. So I think it was like fantastic, and I think touching upon ethics like this was what we wanted to do, and not really sort of go into building theories around it. Like I said, like as a practical aspect, also for people who kind of hire filmmakers to understand that it's a very difficult job when you go on the ground. It's not easy. It's
It is.
shooting, like you said, that if I have a 4 a.m. shoot, I wake up at 3 and I meditate. So, which means that I have to go to bed that much early, which means that I have to be wrapping up my last shoot that much earlier. And so it's kind of it's a different lifestyle that you start following when you're shooting, right? That's sort of contributes to everything. And I think what we kind of all what we all kind of come to agree at the end of it is that like a story is important, but the perception is far more important than that. And it's for us, it's like very, very important that the responsibility of what we create, it still has to be, it has to work for the person who we're shooting, also for someone we're shooting for, and it's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
always a mediated experience, right? It's never an objective experience. It's always, you're always mediating. It's going through you, right? You're the channel, and it's same with the client, right? They may come up with this expectation. This is the kind of visual they would want. This is the kind of narrative arc that they would want. And a lot of advocacy films nowadays, in fact, if I were to talk about, they're also following the same route, and they would like for the film to have that kind of a story arc, and those kind of scenes and those moments that are getting captured. Uh, but I like some of these organizations. Like I can take example of Girls Not Brides, for example. They had like a 70-page dossier on what the ethics would be on the ground, which they made me read, and then they made me sign the contract. And they had a talk with me after I read the dossier. And it's so thorough. And I love the fact that this is an international organization, not for profit. And I was so impressed that, I learned so much from that, because there are these small things that we kind of tend to take for granted. But there lies the catch, where you can slip down that slope of like, okay, you breached somebody's trust. And that's not all right. So yeah, these advocacy films have kind of taught me quite a lot as well about ethics, which is largely not, and even broadcast media organizations, journalistic organizations, they tend to teach you a lot about what ethics are really, because there's actually a 5-pointer that you just should not do, right? Same with advocacy films. When you're doing independent work, there's a lot of gray area. You
yeah.
see, yeah.
Yeah, but I guess like even when you're doing independent work, it's important to kind of keep these
All
things
of
in
this,
mind, right?
yeah.
All of these things in mind. So fantastic. That was great talking to you, Priyanka. But before we end, I'm going to ask you a question that we kind of ask everyone. We plan to ask everyone who we speak with, because at the end of the day, we're all people who give good stories. So according to you, what are the 3 ingredients that make a good storyteller?
Storyteller or
Yeah,
telling?
story. You want to say what are the 3 ingredients that make a good story?
I can talk about both. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think the 3 ingredients for a good story teller to have is to be, first of all, to be somebody who understands whether or not, when you walk into a room, whether or not you have the right to tell that story. A lot of times you walk into a room, that this is not something that you should be telling. This is not the story for you. And whether or not you have the humility to say that, okay, I back off. I have had that. I wanted to do a story on masculinity, men's circle, and a few men who told me that, you will walk into a room, the men will not be themselves. So I walked out of that room. I am not the person to tell that story. I think that's a very, very critical aspect of being a storyteller. Yeah, that's very critical. Another thing, as a storyteller, it's important for you to respect the people who you work with. Um, and I mean respect that comes from a place of integrity. And when I say integrity, I mean uh, that sense of unbreakable, trust and bond that is formed between two people. Um, and the third is informed consent. That is part of it. Yeah, that is part of it.
That's
And
very nice. No, sorry, go on.
yeah, this is the storyteller, as I see the ticker say that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's great because you've actually defined this in the context of documentary filmmaking, right? I mean, for a writer, it would be a very different thing, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, this is just in the context of, strictly in the context of, and nobody owes you, and also nobody owes you anything. That's a big, big one.
I think that's why you should end it.
Yeah. Yes. And
Yes.
of a story, so to say, there has to be, and especially a documentary film, it has to be a visually stunning film, and that is something that I hold on to, even though I have this need to protect the people I work with, develop access, and trust and all of this. What I really go after is a visually stunning film, and my whole aim is that okay, there is this Bombay where there's Bollywood films where there's this fiction element. Uh, I strive to make sure that kind of stunning lighting, natural lighting that I'm, seeing being used on the big budget films. Can I use that in a very strategic, low production cost way on my documentary films? That is something that I go after because eyes are come first. Like you see before you hear anything, and that's very important right now for a story. That's something that's non-negotiable for me. I try my best to do that. Another thing is there has to be some sort of a conflict within the character who you've chosen, to develop trust with, etc. Within them, within their psyche, or within them and the environment outside of them. Then that becomes a good, character for a story to develop, right? And I always look for what is whenever I'm shooting, come what may, I'm constantly thinking of what's going to be my opening scene, what is going to be my opening scene, right? Like what is it that I'm going to go with? Like I'm going to go to my audience. I have a responsibility towards them as well, by the way. I haven't talked about this, but very important. What am I going to open with, right? What is it that why should they watch this? And what do I end with? These are the two things that I really pay attention to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Christoph Kieslowski used to say that if you don't have the name of the film, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how many people follow that, but for him, apparently, the name of the film is where everything started. Like, I guess if you look at the names of his films, it's probably like very, very true, right? Like, if you take the Tricolor,
Yeah.
the entire film comes from the name of the film. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. So on that note, thank you so much. I apologize to everyone who was saying that we started late. Hopefully that's not never going to happen again. And we will see you again on 11th of July. Is that correct, Parag? 11th of July?
7th of July.
7th of July. Okay, 7th of July, once again with another guest where we will have another fantastic conversation. And for now, thank you so much, Priyanka. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I hope you had a good time too. And on that note, good night, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nirmala. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.